Yeah, and it's just not healthy to go a full day without having, meaningful conversations and meaningful interrelationship. And yet it happens to too many seniors. Co-housing is the antidote to divide and conquer. It's the antidote to loneliness. It's an antidote to disenfranchisement altogether, at the atomization that we all endure, and the estrangement that too many people endure.
Welcome to Not Born Yesterday, a podcast dedicated to older adults and the challenges and joys of aging. I'm Miriam Goodman. Not Born Yesterday examines the problems and solutions of growing older today. We bring you the wisdom and voices of experts in the field of aging and offer tips on how to feel your best, use your lifetime skills and experience, and make the coming months and years as fulfilling as possible.
I'm Lynn Winter Gross. Not Born Yesterday is brought to you by Next Village San Francisco, a local nonprofit providing older adults with support to help age in place, and by Assisted Living Locators, a San Francisco Bay Area senior care advisory service, helping families make informed decisions about senior care and living options.
Not Born Yesterday, we're considering another alternative to where to live as we age. We often talk about aging in place, but place can mean many things. What if aging didn't mean being lonely, but instead you could move into a community of like-minded people designed for connection? Let's call it aging in community.
Our guest today, Charles Durrett of Cohousing.com, is an architect. He specializes in creating co-housing communities. He believes that co-housing can be the right place for active older adults. He's devoted his career to building co-housing, a custom-built, intentional neighborhood organized by the residents themselves. Charles, welcome to Not Born Yesterday.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Co-housing sounds so simple and obvious, yet not everyone is doing this. When and where did the concept begin, and how do you define co-housing?
Well, co-housing has a pretty universal definition, which starts with the participation of the future residents. That's number one. Number two, it's got extensive common facilities to supplement the private houses. Number three, it's designed to facilitate community over time. People walk by each other on their way home. They don't drive to their houses. And number four, it's completely organized and managed entirely. We meet 2 hours a month and we deal with the issues of the day, whatever they are. And these days, the issue of the day is fire safe because we live in the middle of the Tahoe National Forest. So we have to, trim the bushes and talk about that stuff. Number five is there's no shared economy. And number six, there's no hierarchy. So that's the definition of co-housing. I coined the word. So if you look in the Oxford English Dictionary, it says coined by Chuck Durrett.
Very good. You got the idea from your time in Denmark. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct.
Can you tell us how that appealed to you and what you found?
I was visiting a Danish guy says, Chuck, there's this housing project that you have to see in Denmark. After I had spent a full year in Denmark studying housing, but it was one of my last days. And I went to it and I just saw a human scale of a structure very reminiscent of what maybe an ancient Chinese village looked like, felt like, very reminiscent of a contemporary Portuguese village might look like. But anyway, a place where it was obvious and easy for people to know each other, care about each other, and support each other day to day. It was all very proximate. Co-housing is very much a late 20th century construct. In other words, there was a couple of people, in particular, a man named Jan Goodman Hoyer, who said, you know what? All of the possibilities available are not for me. I want to design something that's not based on, mom working outside of the house, I mean, mom working in the house, dad working outside of the house, 4.5 kids or whatever it was in the early 70s. And based on the real lives and real needs and real wants of contemporary citizens. And it is so interesting to me that what they built, project after project, has nothing to do with any single family house neighborhood. I mean, which is the predominant scenario in our society and in their society. We run about 67% single family houses in this country. They run about 62% single family houses in their country. They were looking for basically a modern day village, and that's what they built.
So when you say modern day village, it's not like a hippie community of 60 years ago. Let's say you don't share bathrooms or you don't share kitchens, things like that.
No, everybody has their own kitchen, but we do share a common kitchen in the common house. I mean, the makeup is more like where I live, 34 houses with a complete kitchen, etc. But a common house with a lot of things in it that makes, a lot of people have 1,000, 1,200 square foot houses in co-housing, but they have a 4,000 square foot common house, which really makes it feel like they have 5,000 square foot of house. And, that we eat there several times a week. We have the laundry there. We have the music room. We have the yoga room there. We have the teenage room. We have the kids room. We have the sitting room, the fireplace, the laundry, as I think I mentioned. And it makes it possible to do a lot of things, mostly live more economically. And we do that throughout, whether it's water, gas, electric, and we just buy it all at commercial rates in 1 meter, and we figure out how to, sub-meter it. And there's just so many possibilities to be a lot less consumeristic. We have one hot tub. We have one lawnmower for 34 houses. So there's just so many. We probably share about 150 things, and it's all easy and obvious when you start to give cooperation and sharing the benefit of the doubt. And we don't do it for ideological reasons, just to be clear. I mean, sure, in most co-housing communities, they'll say something in their early docs like live lighter on the planet is one of my goals. But it's so much more economical. It's so much better. We have one woman who just died 3 weeks before her 100th birthday. She wasn't going to go out and look for a lawnmower, and she wasn't going to mow the lawn. So we have a small committee of people who did that. She did other things and still did it very well, right to the end. And it's just so much more practical to bifurcate a lot of activities like that, organize them like that, than it is every single household having to know how to do every single thing. We have an insurance committee. We have high insurance because of the forest fire potential. And we have a small committee that solved it all and saved us tons and tons of money and got us the best coverage. So it doesn't make sense for every man or woman to have their own castle. It just doesn't. It makes more sense to feel like you're part of a system that's easy to manage, but manages the needs so much better than one-off.
You said earlier that there's no hierarchy. So first of all, how do people come together? I mean, we were talking earlier about how, somebody might apply and think, oh, I don't want them in my group. What if I have to pass them every day on the path that you were talking about? So what are the criteria? What do people look for? And do people get rejected?
Well, we don't vet people, actually. They vet us, and that works out really well. I mean, if they want to live in our community, that's great. And so far that's worked out in 20 years. We've had 34 now, but we've probably had 15 additional. We've had 10 people who've actually died at home. Dying at home was something that people wanted from the beginning, and it's easy. We had a bunch of people who moved in at 85 and older, and it's easy to do that in co-housing because it's easy for me to take over a bowl of chicken soup to somebody, and somebody else to do something else and somebody else to do something else. And of course, they often have professional caregivers that also come in, but that professional caregiver for an hour to hour and a half a day is nothing like the kind of company and support they get from people who really know them and care about them.
So how does it start? You buy a piece of land, or the group buys a piece of land, and you're an architect. So are you helping people design their houses? I don't mean helping people. Are you designing their houses?
Well, no, it is very much about helping them, actually. We spend 4 days designing the site plan. That is the most important thing. And, I'm an architect. I've designed 55 co-housing now, and many other affordable housing projects for nonprofits and even private developers. And people often ask me, Chuck, you've designed 55 of these now. Why don't you just design it? And I always say, because when I get people's real values, real experiences, real needs and wants and desires on the table, they do a better job than I would do. And over again, I finish the project and I go, oh my God, I could not come up with this on my own. Professionals will simplify things, make things expedient. They won't be the rich environments that these typically are. And I need them to really care about the project too, because the hardest part of getting these projects built is getting them approved by the local cities. So I need them to have their heart in it. I need them to have serious emotional ownership, more important than even financial ownership. That both happens.
Well, you've done 55 communities. Does that mean 55 different types of housing, or you kind of repeat over and over?
So each project has 3 or 4 house types. And depending on how complicated the site is, like I've done a lot of adaptive reuse, take an old building. I'm about ready to start on a project where we're taking an existing school. And those adaptive reuse, they usually have more house types because you have to fit into all these nooks and crannies. Out of 55 projects, I'd say I've probably done a couple hundred different unit types. And it's all in the book, Co-Housing Communities, Designing for High Functioning Neighborhoods is the name of it.
So let's get back to the basics of all this. A group of people come together. They say they want to build a co-housing community. You say there's no hierarchy. There's nobody in charge. There's no staff. There's no paid staff along the way, aside from the architect. And is that correct?
Oh, no, we have engineers we have lots of consultants. We have engineers, soils engineers, traffic engineers, sometimes acoustic engineers. We have the full complement of folks necessary to make a successful project. I mean, so the interesting task is taking all this highfalutin intentions and boiling it down to something they can afford. That's an interesting task, but it's done with a lot of prioritizing and what have you that basically gets everybody in that wants to be there. And by the way, I didn't really answer the question about how they get started. Typically, they get started by one person in some town who's just motivated to live in a co-housing community. So they tend to host a public presentation. I usually come and do it. I just did this in Vancouver for a 3rd or a 4th project in Vancouver. And the group really tries to get 300 or 400 people in the room, and enough obvious interest that when you walk in the room, everybody feels like this is going to happen. Of course, people have been, putting dreams of one kind or another out there for a long time. And in the end of the day, for people to want to participate, they have to feel like there's some heightened sense of inevitability here, and nothing automatic about it, but there's enough skill in the room, enough desire in the room, so we make sure that they invite the local bankers and the local bureaucrats and the local neighbors and their friends and family. Just put as many seats in the butts in the seat as possible. Give a public presentation. This is co-housing, and then that's usually a Thursday night. And then on a Saturday, the last slide I show on Thursday night will say, if you're motivated to do this, then show up at the local library from 9 to noon on Saturday. And usually if there's 300 people in the room, 40 or 50 will come to the meeting on Saturday if they're serious. That number is a lot bigger because they saw how much interest and how much skill and how much talent comes to the table, basically.
So what are the basic benefits of co-housing?
I could talk about the benefits to seniors all day. And it's not just about loneliness. It's about engagement. It's about stimuli. It's about growing. It's about thinking, feeling like you're part of something, like you're part of not a family per se, but you're not cast adrift by any stretch of the imagination. Basically, you might become known as the person who makes the great birthday cakes for everybody, or the person who makes the lemon meringue pie. But it doesn't take long before people not only know you, but they respect you. And once they start respecting you, then they're very much there to support you. And that benefit is about as germane to the human condition as it gets, basically, just like any old-fashioned village. It's interesting. The easiest project I ever designed in the U.S. was in Emeryville, California. And I have a photograph of that group and nobody in that group was born in the USA. They were all born in Jamaica and South Korea and Japan and Mexico, and they all grew up in a village. So when it came to living their life out in the most successful way they possibly could, they wanted to be around people that knew them and cared about them. And they had that experience before. Americans are very disadvantaged here because village life has been pretty much culled from our existence. We left the villages, some of us in Europe, basically that long ago. And many of us haven't lived in a village since. It pays if you have some sense of community already. And a lot of people do. I grew up in a small town of 325 people. And it just became a natural extension of my life that if Mrs. Johnson across the street needed something like a ride to the pharmacy or something, I wouldn't even hesitate she wouldn't even hesitate to ask me, and I would figure out a way that I could do it. So, for people who know what symbiosis looks like amongst neighbors, then it's just dead obvious that this is the thing to do. Americans have to learn it again. So I'm glad you're having this podcast.
It seems like many people around the world live in multi-generational families, and that's not a traditional American way of living, at least now. So people don't have their children around and their grandchildren around and can get lonely and can be on their own too much.
Yeah, and it's just not healthy to go a full day without having, meaningful conversations and meaningful interrelationship. And yet it happens to too many seniors. Co-housing is the antidote to divide and conquer. It's the antidote to loneliness. It's an antidote to disenfranchisement altogether, at the atomization that we all endure and the estrangement that too many people endure. So, and people who've lived in villages, it's just automatic that they wouldn't want to live that way. Some people are figuring it out, living in single family houses, that they need to get out of there. I have a photo that I show every once in a while where it's a typical single family houses. And I always mention that, you can just imagine every 12th house is a forlorn senior watching a big TV, and every 10th house is a forlorn teenager playing Nintendo with some guy across the country. That behavior today is more prominent than community life. If you walk into where I live, you will see people sitting down at the picnic table, talking to each other, sharing snacks, sharing coffee, sharing bagels on a Sunday morning, and having meaningful conversations. So, and that's the essence of why people choose senior co-housing, for example, or intergenerational housing.
I keep thinking of the people that move in that don't get along with the other residents. They're too bossy. They're not doing their share. They're a pain in the neck. What happens to those people?
Yeah, there's a fair amount of pessimism like that. It's every presentation I do, somebody will ask me that question every single time. And I always say that, if you live in co-housing and you're grating against 20 people are grating on you. It is not sustainable. So there's a couple things that is required to move into co-housing. The most important one is you have to know how to listen. if you don't know how to listen, don't bother. And there have been a lot of lawyers, for example, who have had great aspirations for living in co-housing, but they're used to telling people stuff and they didn't know how to listen. And they often drop out. They usually drop out because they just never got that skill. But there are a lot of other people, I'm going to say a third, who really do know how to listen, and they're the ones who make the project successful for sure. And there's a third who go, I really want to learn how to listen. I really want to learn how to be a communitarian. And so those 2/3 are the ones who usually go forward and make the community happen. And people know, they figure it out right away that if I can't listen, I shouldn't live here. And if I'm not highly motivated to learn how to listen, I shouldn't live here. That being said, there's a second thing that really has emerged as a requirement for living in co-housing, and that is the ability to read. And you guys might be surprised to find out how many people don't read anymore either. So a lot of co-housing communities actually make it required that you read one of the co-housing books before you move in, just so you know some sense of what you're getting into, basically. You know, you're making dinner once a month, really. You really are making dinner once a month for everybody. And then the rest of the nights, you're not making dinner, et cetera, et cetera. And why that happened and how that happened because of, various feminist goals that tried to set men up so that they could cook dinner as often as the moms,
What do the residents fight about the most?
Well, we don't fight about anything. I'm just going to say that. I mean, because before we move in, we take all kinds of workshops around nonviolent communication and, respectful coexistence and about facilitation. The facilitators do a great job in our monthly meeting. But we disagree about it plenty. And, we argue that the purpose of argument and discussion is not to find out who's right or wrong, but to find the best solution, the shiniest rock. So that's fine. But we discuss a lot of hard things, cut the tree down, don't cut the tree down. Some people think, we have to cut all 3 of these trees down because the bark beetle has affected tree number 1, and we might as well get the other 2 while we're at it, et cetera. And that often creates, that can create emotions. I love that tree. I've been sitting next to that tree for 10 years. Our picnic table's under that tree. It's real. It's real. But I have to say, one of the many things that impresses me about co-housing is to what extent people learn to respect each other and care about each other. And they start to care about things like that more than the tree, each other, I mean, because, that person made dinner for me last night and it was an amazing dinner. But they do tend to be environmentalists, and they'll make a mountain out of a molehill whenever they have a chance around environmental issues, no doubt about it.
What does a typical community look like? Is it high rises? Is it cottages? How can you describe what they look like?
They're houses that are connected to each other, usually 3 to 6 houses that are connected to each other in row house, townhouse kind of fashion. That's the most characteristic co-housing. But they do exist in high rises, especially in places like Sweden. The high-rise solution is very, very prominent, and it might be floors 4, 5, and 6 in a 20-story high-rise, where the 4th floor or the 5th floor will be the common facilities, and people live on the 4th floor and the 6th floor.
So who's the typical resident?
In the case of senior co-housing, it's to make it very senior friendly in that people can sit around at a picnic table and have a cup of coffee and talk about their lives. And, telling stories is integral to growing older, frankly, and it's integral to successfully growing older.
And what about for seniors? You find that the group is different if they start out, as you said, many had already been homeowners and they're probably retired. What brings that group together?
Senior co-housing in the U.S. is a lot easier to do than intergenerational co-housing for 2 main reasons. Number one is the seniors are so impatient, and I love working with them because they're like, make this thing happen, get this thing done. They always say we started too late because too often they start in their late 60s and they wish they had started in their early 60s.
We've recently heard about a group of American seniors from India who wanted to be only with other people from their same culture because they're used to different things. Do you find that there's cultural diversity in communities, or pretty much one culture staying together because they're used to certain ways of living?
That project, if it comes to fruition, it'll be the first in the U.S. that has a select group of people. And, I've talked to them before, it's largely around food, believe it or not, but also, it's the similarities culturally, no doubt. I don't expect that to happen much in the U.S.
If somebody's listening today and think this is a good idea for them, what's the first thing they should do? Read your books, I assume, would come first. But is there some place that they could start? Do they talk to friends, say, hey, would you like to join this? I mean, what do you need to get the ball rolling?
It's an interesting question because, as I mentioned, it seems like most projects start with one person who's just annoyed with the estrangement of our contemporary lifestyles. And they just say, Durrett, can you come to Santa Barbara and do a presentation about co-housing? I really want to get a project started. That's what usually kicks them off.
Well, you've been at this for many years. So what have you seen are the major changes from when the first co-housing community you worked on to what's happening in the 21st century?
People, I think, are starting to appreciate the fact that coming into the community more knowledgeable than not is helpful. We will probably grow to a place where cooperation gets the benefit of the doubt for every other goal, for the sake of every other goal we have, like living lighter on the planet, saving money, being less consumeristic, driving less, and all the rest. Then they want to think about that before they choose to jump into it.
Do you think there's one major misunderstanding you'd like to correct before we say goodbye?
Well, that's a great point. I mean, it is interesting to me how much fear people have about change, whether it's neighbors. Oh my God, you're building 34 houses at the same time, and this is a custom neighborhood. We already have a great neighborhood. There's so many misconceptions. So there's so much BS running around in our brains that, people really need to stop and think about what's really happening in their lives and really happening in the world.
Thank you so much for telling us about co-housing and how our listeners can learn more about it. Our guest was Charles Durrett of Cohousing.
Oh, I just have one last thing. They should get the book Senior Cohousing. That's the key book that is written to help people imagine living in cohousing. Thank you guys so much.
Today on News You Can Use, we're suggesting new ways for grandparents to connect with their grandchildren. Even if you're not a grandparent yourself, you're no doubt aware that teenagers and 20-somethings rarely make actual telephone calls. So if you really want to connect to your grandchildren, do it their way, by text or even old-fashioned email.
Forget the long phone calls and start to text instead. Try sending your grandchildren a few texts each week or some funny videos. You don't want to have guilt-induced communication, but sending them a quick note or photo will let them know you're thinking about them, and most will be happy to hear from you. You won't have to worry about bothering them because they will respond when they want.
Many adults of every age report that they're sorry they didn't ask their grandparents more questions about their lives when they were young. If you still have grandparents, asking them how they felt about their school or career might make both of you feel closer, especially if you find you share likes or dislikes. You might even learn things about your own parents you didn't know before.
How about sending selfies? Take a photo of yourself in the garden or at a ball game or playing a sport. It doesn't matter how much time and can easily go in both directions. That way you can feel you are seeing the kids grow up.
Remember, your grandchildren are busy and may not have time for a long catch-up conversation. The key to keeping the relationship alive is with consistency. Not too many texts, but enough so that they know you're thinking about them. And don't expect an immediate response. Your grandchildren or other young family members do want to know what you're doing, just not on your timetable. So use the technology they are using, and you may be surprised how much easier it is to stay in touch.
And that's our podcast for today. Our thanks go to our guest, Charles Durrett, architect of Cohousing Communities and author of Senior Cohousing Handbook. You can learn more about Next Village San Francisco at their website, nextvillagesf.org, or by calling 415-888-2868. To learn more about assisted living locators, contact Senior Care Advisor Brent Hensley at brenth@assistedlivinglocators.com. Our theme music is from Hook Sounds, and Claire Winslow is our engineer. And we want to thank you for listening. We'd love to hear what you would like us to discover and discuss. Please contact us at notbornyesterdaypodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. They're all free and let us know our audience better. Be well, stay strong, and remember, you weren't born yesterday. I'm Lynn Winter Gross.
And I'm Miriam Goodman.